Welcome to Outmaneuver. I'm Faith. I'm here with his Dudeness. And today we're going to go through all the cards that are common and uncommon in Jump to Lightspeed.
So we've got it separated into top, good, filler, fringe, and never. Top is, well, exactly that. Top, best of the best. I'm happy playing any number of these cards in my deck. Good cards are pretty solid. I'm usually happy running at least 2 copies of these, maybe 3, depending on the deck. Filler is filling in holes that you need in your deck. You usually only want to be playing 1 copy of any of these cards, but maybe 2 if your deck really needs it. Fringe is similar to filler, but fulfilling even more niche roles. Usually are only looking to play 1 copy. And then never, we're usually trying to never play any of these cards in your deck because they just actively make your entire deck worse.
And you can see those never cards on the screen now. It should be noted that in Jump to Lightspeed, there are a few reprints from other sets. So we see on the screen Repair now. That's from set 1. These will be found in booster packs, so that's why they're on our list. And we'll start us off with Echo Base Engineer. It'll be pretty tough to time it where you can effectively use that shield.
For that, we've got the Dakar Cargo Frigate. This feels good in Rose Tico and kind of bad everywhere else.
Next up, we've got Desperate Commando. -1/-1. If it doesn't defeat a unit, then he's basically a wasted trade down.
After that, we've got the Omicron Strikecraft. 2/3 just does not spark any amount of joy.
And after that, we got Bunker Defender. At its very best, it gives you Sentinel on the ground. In this set, you're going to have much more space units, so a ground Sentinel is a little bit less effective.
We've got the Resupply Carrier. They let you, when played, add the top card of your deck as a resource. I just think the ramp comes too late, and there's no other ways to ramp to this sooner. This is basically only good in Piet.
Next up, we've got Dorsal Turret. It inherently makes you get 2 for 1.
After that, we've got the AT-DP Occupier. It's bad because you only get -1 if it's a damaged ground unit in a set mostly focused on space.
Next up, we've got Insurgent Saboteurs. You're not swinging out with this until at least turn 6. And by then, if your opponent sees this on the ground, they're not going to pilot their unit, their leader, onto a ship. They'll just deploy them on the ground.
So now we have Fight Fire with Fire. This card really only feels good if you are playing with Rose, as she can heal up the damage on the unit, or if you're playing some sort of grit units.
After that, we got System Shock. It lets you defeat a non-leader upgrade, but that damage is conditional on defeating the upgrade.
And now we've got the Blade Squadron B-Wing. It's when played will almost certainly never go off, and it's just a 3/3 space unit.
And after that, we got Diversion. At Desperation Moment, maybe, but often this takes you in action, and so it's not going to probably do anything, so your opponent will just take it out in the next instance.
After that, we've got the Quasar TIE Carrier. He's just a big, fat stat stick for 6 that on attack creates a TIE fighter. It's an on attack on a 6 drop. It just feels a little too late.
We've got Swarming Vulture Droid next. You won't be able to get enough of these for them to most likely be meaningful. And next up, we've got the Filler tier. So we're going to start with Interceptor Ace. This is going to be one of those units, pilots that are going to give your unit a grit.
And then we've got the Academy Graduate. This guy giving your thing Sentinel can be pretty solid, but it is only a +1/+2 upgrade.
After that, we've got the Royal Security Fighter. Your ultimate goal is to put one of those pilots on him to make him stronger to use that grit. Particularly a leader would be the best.
And next up, we've got the Landing Shuttle. If you're playing with Thrawn, this definitely gets bumped up into good, probably, because being able to draw cards is pretty solid.
Next up, we've got Outer Rim Outlaws. You're letting this unit attack and deal combat twice to another unit to take out something with 6 health.
And then we've got the Cloaked Star Viper. So this guy is really looking to be upgraded somehow so that you can get maximum value out of your pilots.
And after that, we've got Magnificent Frigate. Having 7 health means it's going to stay around, hopefully, for 1 or 2 combats. And 4 damage is nothing to scoff at.
Now we've got the CR90 Relief Runner. You'll notice that each color is getting its own 6-cost big beefy unit. This is blues. Only getting value when it on attacks or when defeated seems a little slow, but definitely gets a bump up in Thrawn because being able to heal 6 is pretty nice.
And after that, we got First Order TIE Fighter. At its upside, it's going to be attacking for 3. However, you are going to need a TIE Fighter. This is probably good in Vader, and in other decks, it's fine.
Then next up, we've got the TIE Ambush Squadron. The 2/3 stat line is very poor. You get a TIE Fighter when played and when defeated, so you get a couple TIE Fighter tokens, but I don't know, this guy seems basically the definition of filler.
We've got Scouting Headhunter. You could put it as a roadblock, little speed bump for your opponent's units, but it's pretty filler.
And then we've got the Homestead Militia, a reprint from set 1. gets Sentinel if you control 6 or more resources. A bit more valuable than previous sets because it is nice being able to go into a different lane when everyone's trying to go space.
After that, we got Adept Arc 170. Normally, a Restore space unit is really, really strong. 3-4 stat line in space should survive combat with a lot of early game units. And then there are some mid game chips that could take it down, but it's probably taking 2 hits, and that's what kind of keeps it in this filler tier.
And now all wings report in. I'm not actually sure on this card. This card might actually be good in the right deck, because being able to go wide pretty easily could be good, but as it stands, it feels filler.
And after that, we've got First Order Stormtrooper, your basic 1 cost kind of push tempo on the ground early. It's a little bit low impact. You're hoping to get a couple attacks with it.
And now we've got the prototype TIE Advance. This is just a 4/3 in space. A nice solid unit. Can't really go wrong.
And after that, we got Mezzi Tactical Officer. The ideal thing is maybe you're trading up with these fighters. You could also crash base with them if you're going super aggressive to the base. However, it is a 0-4 itself, and so it is going to need to be on the board for a turn to be used. Requires some setup.
Now we've got the Crack Shot V-Wing. This is another 1-drop space unit. 2/2 deals 1 damage to itself if you don't control a fighter. This is good in decks that are trying to go wide and trying to play as many pilots as possible, because it's another vehicle to equip.
And after that, we've got the supporting ship. If you can get in the right situation, it can be valuable. However, it does require some setup, and so you are going to be needing to manage both your ground and your space arena for it to get maximum potential.
And then we've got a Determined Recruit. Some solid stats, right? Definitely is a more aggressive stat line in an aggressive color.
We've got the Orbiting K-Wing next, one of the 2 saboteurs in this set. Hopefully, you can put a pilot on it.
And now we've got another reprint from set 1 again, the Occupier Siege Tank. This is a nice counter to all the indirect, right? If your opponent is playing indirect, you just put it on your grit unit. It's feeling pretty nice.
Zygerin Starhopper next. It's going to be a turn 1 play. When it's defeated, you have some indirect damage you can put on their base. However, they get to choose how that damage is dealt, and so that's where it's kind of why it's just a filler card.
See, after that, we've got the Techno Union Transport. The Shielded is pretty nice, and Shielded is definitely works really well with pilots and upgrades. And this guy is also a really nice target for Rio as a leader deploy, because he gets bonus synergies with transports.
And after that, we've got Black Squadron Scoutwing. It does give you some action efficiency.
And then next up, we've got the Dagger Squadron Pilot. It's just a 1-cost 2/1 pilot or ground unit. Increase more copies of if you're trying to do a very aggro-oriented deck.
And we've got Independent Smuggler after that, a 1-cost 1/1 raid 1. With its pilot can give your guy that extra stat buff, extra damage.
It's very similar to the Dagger Squadron that we just talked about, but it gives you raid 1 instead of the permanent attack stat boost.
Yes.
I will say with both of these 1-cost pilots and all the 1-cost pilots, they get infinitely better if you're playing Wedge, because being able to play them on turn 1 for free attached to one of your 2-cost vehicles is a really strong play. But after the Independent Smuggler, we have the Guerrilla Soldier. Another one of those where it's got indirect on it, but the thing about indirect is that your opponent will put it everywhere you don't want it to go. But the nice thing here is that if they do put it on the base, which usually is where you don't want it to go early on, you get to ready it up. So it does have some nice utility. If your opponent has no ground units at all, it's just a nice 3 to the base, an extra 2 on the attack.
And after that, we've got Skyway Cloud Car. This card can let you return a unit that has 3 less power to when it's defeated. This can be good for getting rid of your opponent's tokens. It can provide you with a little bit of temple play. However, there's also times when it's totally irrelevant if they don't have something that's kind of weaker than that. So that's where it's kind of in this filler category.
Punch It. I think this is filler plus, approaching good, because being able to attack with a vehicle unit, give a +2. Obviously, there's lots of vehicles in this set, and this gives you the ability to trade up. Like if your opponent does put an annoying pilot on one of their units, you can just punch it and trade up, still get a 2-for-2 trade, and deal with a potential annoying unit, right?
After that, we've got Torpedo Barrage. The problem, as Dudeness alluded earlier, too, with indirect damage is the fact that they're going to put your opponent gets to choose where it goes. So it's always going to be in the least advantageous spot to you.
All right, now we've got the Indoctrinated Conscript. This is just another 1-cost pilot with 1/2 stats this time. I kind of like the 1/2 more than 2/1, because more HP means it's more likely to stick around and get more use out of it. So I would probably put these like over the other filler one cost palettes we've shown so far, but it's still not like amazing.
And after that, we've got Sith Troopers. These are a basic 3/3 for 3, so their stat line is below curve. But it does have on attack, it gets +1, +0 for each damaged unit the defending player has. This is kind of good because if you can get a bunch of damage on your opponent's units, then it could be stronger. The downside is it's only based off your opponent's damaged units, so they need to have a couple damaged units to get make it kind of above its stat line.
Yeah, and now with the TIE Dagger Vanguard, it's more sort of damaged unit synergy. This one, when played, you may deal 2 damage to a damaged unit. Both of these cards definitely feel like they're indirect synergies, right? Punishing your opponent for putting random damage on their units.
Full volunteer, like kind of the rest. This one gives you +1/3 stat line, so it's one more health than the villainy version, but it does cost one more, and so that's the downside to it.
I mean, now we've got another one of those 6 cost units, this time the Jedi Light Cruiser for heroes. This guy is basically like the ATST from set 1, but just in space, minus overwhelm. Just a big 6/7 body. I mean, I think this is kind of filler plus, because if your opponent can't deal with this, it can end the game very quickly.
We've got Coordinated Front, a 2 cost unit. That really, this card can be better if you've got both a ground and a space unit. However, that can sometimes be difficult, which definitely lowers the impact of this card. Be a total of 4 damage, which can be a lot. But again, you need to have both arenas have units in them to get advantage.
Now we've got the token generator, the dedicated wingman, same as set 3 for break-in. It creates 2/2/2 tokens. This time it's X-Wing tokens. I mean, it's a solid card. You're okay running 1, and you can definitely potentially run 2, depending on what kind of deck you're running with. So, it's fine.
And here's our 8th and final pilot for this filler tier, and that is the Solstan Spacer. This is like that Independent Smuggler. It's giving you a 1/1 for 1. It does not give you raid, but it can be played in any color, which is its advantage. Like all these 1 cost ones, as Dudeness mentioned, Wedge can play them for free, which is where they can get the most value.
Yeah, that spacer is basically a build your own R2D2 at home with Wedge. And if you can get a turn 1 with that guy, it's going to be pretty solid there. And then the very final card in the filler tier, we have the Corellian Freighter, yet another reprint. If you have need for Sentinels in space, hey, it does a fine job.
And now we're going to get to our good tier. These are cards that you're actually going to want to be playing, looking forward to. And the first one is Onyx Squadron Brute. It's when defeated, you heal 2 damage from your base. This does have a negative effect of it might not do anything if you don't have any damage on your base when it's defeated. However, with Thrawn doubling that damage, its ceiling can be pretty high of healing up to 4. Something to look forward to.
Yeah, then 2/3 for 2s in space is the pretty standard stat line here. So after that, we've got the Fleet Interceptor. 7 cost 6/6 Sentinel in space. When defeated, you may defeat a space unit that costs 3 or less. This guy is really solid if you're playing with Piet, but even then, a 6/6 Sentinel in space is going to stop most of the things your opponent is doing. And when they do defeat it, there's a chance it even goes off after that. So pretty solid card for sure.
Up next, we've got Red Squadron X-Wing, one of the few cards in the game that can replace itself. That is, if you deal 2 damage to it when you play it. It comes in as a 3/4. Again, if you do that, it's a 3/2. But being able to replace itself is going to give you some card advantage, which is going to be nice. And its 3 attack power is not the worst thing in the world. The more options you have on a card, also the better. If your opponent has something that's going to take it out and you really need this unit to stick, you don't have to draw the card.
And now we have the Star Wars Unlimited version of Taz Dingo. We've got the Perimeter ATRT, a 3/5 ground sentinel. I mean, 3/5 ground sentinel is just super solid. And like I was saying earlier, the ability to play into ground this set, I think, is going to be pretty premium, because being able to lane dodge when your opponent wants to go off space can be pretty huge. And this guy is a vehicle, and he costs 4. So a lot of pilots are costing 5 of this set. Pilot leaders, I should say. So it's a good, nice deploy on that turn. So solid card here.
Next up, we have Covering the Wing. This, for 2 costs, creates an X-Wing token, which is a 2/2 unit. And then you may give a shield token to another unit. This is spicy because it does say another unit. It's not limited to just vehicles. So you can deploy your leader, play this, create that token, and give your leader a shield. And shields are good in this game. So it lets you attack and not take damage back, which is strong.
Now we've got some removal here without the airlock, a 5 cost, just give a unit -5, -5. It's important to note that this can be any unit, including a leader unit, and even if this doesn't kill the unit off, you can still use another unit to then kill off this extremely weakened unit, probably taking very little to no damage in return. So if they put a pilot on a vehicle, you can use this and try to deal with that pretty easily.
And up next, we've got the Kajimi Patrollers. This is going to be droid deployment, but in space. And so you've got for 2 costs, you're going to put this unit into play and create another 1/1. You're getting 2 units. If you have initiative and you're playing with Vader and you got this, this will allow you to have just a huge number of units on the board to fill the arena out. It also, if you need to get something through, getting 2 units on the board to start really is nice because your opponent can't deal with both of them usually in one card, one action early in the game.
And now we've got Batch Brothers for set 4, the Veteran Fleet Officer, a 2/1 that lets you create an X-Wing token when played. This is nice because it allows you to affect both arenas with one card, and it does activate cards like we mentioned earlier, the coordinated, was it planned assault or whatever it's called? I
Yeah,
already forgot the name of it.
yeah.
Coordinated front, as well as like tandem assault. So pretty solid card here.
And after that, we've got Resistance Blue Squadron. This card is nice because, while being a space unit itself, when just by playing it, you're going to get to ping something off, deal damage equal to the number of units you have in space to any unit, which is where its advantage is. You can target the ground. Even if you have a couple units in space, you can still either deal some damage or defeat ground units, or weaken space units, or wherever you need that damage. And green wants to go wide anyways, so green heroism, it works really well for the card.
And you're always guaranteed to at least ping something for 1, because when played, it'll always count on itself. Okay, so after that, we've got the Clone Pilot. This is just a 2-cost 2/2 pilot. Basically a solid 2/2 upgrade that you can put on any of your vehicles, and has the added flexibility of going to the ground if you needed to, which, like I said, sometimes being able to go into ground is pretty nice. So I think these guys are pretty solid. You can be pretty happy running 2 or 3 of these.
And after that, we've got the Eager Escort Fighter. If you wanted open fire for space units, this is green's version of that because it's going to deal 4 damage with its ambush. It also has the benefit of, if you need to, you can just play it without ambushing it, and if your opponent doesn't deal with it, that's going to be 4 damage to their face every turn pretty early.
All right, now we've got the MC-30 Assault Frigate. 5 cost, 5/5 overwhelm with raid 1 and space. Just really solid stats here. And this is a really nice target to deploy your pilot leader on, because giving it overwhelm allows you to control the board while still pushing damage onto the base. So I
And
think this card is really nice just because it's a nice target for your pilots.
yeah, and five's a good cost for that. Next up, we have the best art in the set in my mind. It also is a great matte art if you want to get that by GameGenic, and that is Tandem Assault. This lets you attack with a space unit, and then you can also attack with a ground unit. If you do, that unit's going to get +2/+0. It's going to hit a little bit harder, and especially to close out a game, this is going to be a way to either have a memorable story for you or a heartbreaking defeat like I just suffered in my pre-release.
Oh, no. Sorry, the next event we've got here is Air Superiority, 2-cost tactic that lets you deal 4 damage to a ground unit if you control more space units than that opponent. This is a nice way to deal with the ground. Obviously, if you're going heavy space, sometimes it's hard to activate the more space units, but if you have a dedicated enough deck, it's pretty easy to pull off.
After that, we've got Focus Fire. It's a 4 cost event. It lets you choose an opponent's unit, and then all your vehicles in that arena deal damage to it. So it's gonna be, if you have a lot of units, it's gonna be a great way to take out something big on their side of the field with all of your medium to small size ships. They basically just get to attack it without receiving any damage back.
Okay, now we've got the Special Forces TIE Fighter, another 2-cost, 2/3 in space. It's just super solid. And when played, if an opponent controls more space units and you get to ready it. So obviously, turn 1 is probably never going off, but turns 3 to 4, maybe this goes off and you get a pseudo ambush in it. So it's not bad.
Going on 2 cost ships, we've got Red Squadron Y Wing. This card, as we talked about before with indirect damage, is best when the more indirect damage you can deal over time, because they can't put all that indirect damage on their units. And this is going to allow you multiple sources of 3 indirect damage. It is a 1/3 stat line, so a little bit weaker on that stat line. But if they take that all to their base, that is a 4 damage on its attack. So that's pretty strong. Great when you have multiples of them.
All right. Then we have the Rebellious Hammerhead, 6 cost 5/7. It's a solid stat line, pretty hard to deal with. And when played, you deal damage to a unit equal to the number of cards in your hand. So it's important to note that this can go into either arena. And basically, any big costed unit that has a win played is usually better than the ones that don't have a win played. And this one's win played is definitely pretty relevant.
After that, we've got Twin Laser Turret. This is going to attach to a vehicle unit only. On attack, they can deal 1 damage to up to 2 different units in that arena. One of the nice things is that it does let you have this with a pilot on a unit, so pilots can't be on the same unit. It is going to allow you to potentially kill 3 things in 1 attack. However, you can't deal that to 1 unit, so you do have to kind of take off minor ships on the side. So it can be good in the right situation.
Good for taking out TIE fighter tokens for sure. Okay, then after that, we've got the Piercing Shot. This is a 3 cost event. It allows you to defeat all the shield tokens on a unit and then deal 3 damage to that unit. It's a little bit more situational, does less damage than an open fire, but 3 damage is still pretty relevant, and removal is always at a premium in a limited environment. So I think this card will be pretty decent.
Next up, we got the Kogrin turn. This card is going to be really fun when you have a pilot unit, like your leader that's piloted on a ship, and you're allowing them to be readied for 3 costs. Potentially doing this like on turn 6 when you have 6 resources. You can do this if you have 2 copies of the card twice, which can let you have a lot of damage. I'm thinking like if you have Luke who gives +4 onto that Y wing we talked about earlier, and he's now swinging for 5, and he's able to deal a bunch of damage on attack trigger. That's what kind of a card like this is really, really solid for.
All right, now we've got the Space Sentinel Contracted Jump Master, 2/4 for 3. And if you notice, we had a 2/3 Space Sentinel earlier that we said was pretty booty cheeks. Well, all the difference 1 health makes goes from booty cheeks to pretty good. I'm definitely running like 2 or even maybe more of these in my deck because it's pretty much always going to be relevant, especially in this set. Everyone's going to be wanting to go space.
And after that, we've got Republic Y Wing. This is going to be a 1 cost ship with 3 health, so it's pretty going to stay alive, most likely. And it only has 1 attack power, but again, it can hopefully deal 2 attacks coming in. And it's a fighter, and it's going to be a great target for those pilots.
All right, now we've got the ground ambush unit, X-34 land speeder, 2 cost 2/3 that does exactly that, ambushes. And this is just another case of ambush as a good keyword in the limited for Star Wars Unlimited. So
And after that, we've got Death Space Skirmisher. This 3 cost unit does allow you to exhaust an enemy unit if you control another space unit, which this set is all about space units. So it's going to help you kind of maintain forward presence and tap your opponents down so that they're not overwhelming you with damage.
it's really gross against the pilots because you want to play pilot before you attack with a unit. You play the pilot and then you just exhaust it with the skirmisher.
It also is nice because it can also tap leaders, which is strong.
Yes, in a unit. That's a very, very good card. All right, and then now we have the Hemogila. I don't know how to say that word. Heavy fighter. This is just a 4 cost 3/4 that when played deal 3 indirect, but you also get to exhaust each unit damage this way. So this sort of incentivizes your opponent to put it all onto base, which is nice if you need to in the right spot, or if they don't, then you have the chance to even exhaust. And as we just saw, being able to exhaust your opponent's units in the right spot can be pretty good.
And after that, we got another 4 cost unit. This is the Shadowed Hover Tank. This is a 5/3 Sentinel, so it's a French vanilla card, as it's kind of sometimes termed. But 5 power is a lot. On the ground, there's going to be less ground units. The 3 health is a little concerning, but its cost is really nice because next turn you can pilot onto it, which is going to give it, or you could even put pilots on it to hopefully take its health up a little bit as well. That 5 damage can kind of put a clock on your opponent.
Okay, now we have the electromagnetic pulse, just a one cost event, does 2 damage to a droid or vehicle, and then exhaust it. Kind of yellow's version of Daring Raid, that's a bit more narrow, but it does exhaust the unit if you can't kill it. So it's a little bit more flexible in that regard.
And now we've got the villain version of the Y Wing, which is the TIE Bomber. This is as well a 2 cost, but it's a 0/4 as opposed to a 1/3. However, the same thing is it's on attack, you can deal 3 indirect damage. That extra health really wants you to have a pilot on. I find it can be even stronger. However, it is still going to deal 3 damage divided as you choose, and it's probably not going to be defeated turn 1, which is really nice.
Now we have the Rogue class Starfighter, another Space Sentinel, this time a 4/3 for 4. Just really solid. Space Sentinels are always going to be relevant. This is just a single villain aspect, so it can go in any of those decks, and that's why I feel like you're happy having 2 or maybe even more copies of this in your deck.
And after that, we've got the Resistance X Wing. This is going to be a 2 cost 2/2, which is a little bit understated. But while this unit has a pilot on it, it gets +1/+1. If you're playing Wedge, you're almost certainly playing this card with any of those 1 cost upgrades because on turn you can potentially on turn 1 have a 4/4 unit, which is really strong. Leaders also count as upgrading on it. But if you don't have that pilot, it is going to be below curve, below stat.
And now, last but not least, in the good tier, we have the Dilapidated Ski Speeder. This is a 3/7, 3 cost ground unit that, when played, does 3 damage to it. It is only a 3/4 for 3, but it is neutral hero, so it can go in any hero deck. And this card is especially really good in Rose because she can heal off the damage that's done to it. And eventually, if you get it fully healed, 7 health is just a lot to have to deal with.
And now we're on our top tier cards. These are the cards that, if you see it in your skill pool, you're playing these cards right away. You might be trying to build your deck around them. If you're in a draft, these might be top tier cards you're looking for. One of those cards, if anyone is used to any limited format, is removal is very important. And so direct hit is going to be one of the premier removals in this set. In set one, it was takedown, but that was an uncommon. So we're getting this card at the common rarity, and it lets you just defeat a non-leader vehicle unit. If these games go long enough, this could be really strong. And also, the best value is when you destroy those bigger units. The only thing to worry about this card is if your opponent is going very, very wide and low cost units, it doesn't always feel great to spend 4 resources to blow up an X Wing when they have 5 X Wings.
For sure. But hopefully you're in in that scenario, you're hitting a unit that have a pilot on, and it
Yes.
feels less bad. Okay, so now we have Battlefield Marine and Space. The Phoenix Squadron A-Wing, 2 cost, 3/2 for green hero. The difference being between those 2 units is 1 health, but you're getting 3/2 in space. The only 3 attack, 2 drop in this set outside of Fireball, but that's uncommon. So this guy basically trades with anything your opponent can play on turn 1 outside of a TIE Bomber. It's just really solid, and you're happy running 3, 4, probably even 5 copies of this card.
And then I see what TIE Bomber is. It doesn't even damage your guy back. So next turn, you still take it out and didn't take any damage.
Yeah, exactly.
Next, we have the Droid Missile Platform. This is a 3 cost for 2. So its health is a little weaker, but its damage is really high. It also is, when defeated, deal 3 indirect damage to a player. This is a card which I've seen people play constructed wise. And I think it's worthy of also in limited because that 4/2 stat line puts your opponent on a pretty serious clock. And especially if you're playing aggro, you're trying to take their health points to 0 as fast as possible. So that 3 indirect damage is also putting pressure on.
And now we have another removal and Shoot Down, this time a 2 cost aggression. It deals 3 damage to a space unit, and if that unit is defeated, you may deal 2 damage to a base. I mean, surprisingly enough, there's a lot of space units going around, and this card deals with a lot of those space units in a 1-for-1 trade. And then it has the added benefit of dealing an extra 2 damage to the base if you kill it. Because, like, if the card just said it deal 3 damage to a space unit and it stopped right there, it would still be at least good, if not still top tier. The fact that it also damages your opponent's base just makes this card, in my mind, just absolute bonkers.
And after that, we've got Corporate Light Cruiser, which is a 6 cost cunning card. It's a 4/6. It has Ambush, one of the few cards in the set which has Ambush. It is in space and it has Raid 1. So it's attacking as a 5/6 unit. Your opponent's not going to see it coming. It most likely takes something out unless that's like a leader on a ship, but your guy is probably surviving, and so it's going to be really good at taking out non-leader chips as well.
Yeah, it gives you a unit to remove one of their units and leaves a threat they have to deal with. Like I said, definitely the best of the 6 cost big dumb units we got for the set.
And so that's our tier list for the commons. Since in a pack you're going to get more commons, we wanted to give you how each of these cards break down. We do want to just briefly go over the uncommons. So on the screen now, you're going to see the vigilance cards. Dudeness, if you're playing vigilance villainy, what of these uncommons do you think are going to be really important for you to have, and what are they saying to you?
I think the best uncommon here for villainy is Director Krennic getting the 2/2 shielded and then being able to play when defeated cards for 1 less, and there are quite a few when defeated cards in blue. So I feel like Director Krennic is up there in priority picking if you're in those colors, and especially if you're playing a Thrawn deck.
I think Chimera's the other one that kind of stands out. However, the problem with that is that it is costing 6, and so and like maybe getting an Onyx's healing 2 could be helpful in clutch, but apart from that, it's not as important as Krennic. What about in heroism? What are you seeing with heroism in vigilance?
Heroism, I like Harrison Dula here. You're getting a 2 cost 2/3 pilot, which is pretty solid. And the ability to restore helps out in races. It's not as exciting as Director Krennic, I don't think, but it's still a pretty solid pilot overall that you're happy to have.
I'm pretty excited about You're All Clear Kid. Being able to defeat one of their units and potentially make your unit stronger seems really good. What about if in vigilance in general for these uncommons? Which one of these stands out for you?
The Wingguard security team seems pretty solid because a 4/4 Sentinel shielded is just super obnoxious to deal with. And outside of the -5/-5 event, there's probably no real way to deal with it when it's played.
I kind of like this trace as a ground unit. It's a 2/5, not impressive to me. However, one cost pilot that lets you on attack heal some damage to any number of units. I love that it can heal itself. It can also heal ground units. It seems very flexible and maybe can allow you to do some decent trading. The 1/2 stat line is fine.
It does only cost 1, so definitely a bonus.
We'll now look at command villainy. So with command villainy, we've seen a lot of wanting to go wide and making particularly type TIE fighter token. Which of the cards stands out to you?
I like Captain Phasma. I don't know if it's actually going to be good, but I like the fact that it's wind played and on attack. So you get the immediate value, and on attack you can get more value. So if you can get a Phasma, it makes some of those first order units a lot more desirable.
Yeah, that's really strong. Wing Victor 2 is just notable because he can deploy as a 3/2 on the ground for 2, which I think is great. And his pilot also lets you create another token. So those I think are both really fun. Both those ways he's quite flexible. One of Dudeness' favorite colors is command heroism. Which one of these uncommons are you thinking is the highest priority to grab?
Oh, it's blue leader. It's not even close. This card is straight bonkers. The flexibility is just incredible. You can 3/3 ambush in space, or you can 5/5 ambush on the ground essentially for 5. You can also do the cool play of ambushing like a 2/2 X-Wing token and then paying 2 to move it over onto the ground. So now you have a 5 attack ground threat, which I feel like is a pretty strong play. So Blue Leader is a card I'm happy to have many, many copies of, I think.
I want to highlight for Leia and for Red Leader, both of their effects just say pilot unit or a unit with a pilot on it. So you can sometimes what I've done in the past is play my 2 cost 3/1 pilot on the ground, and then since that pilot's on the ground, it lets you either have the discounted cost on Red Leader, or you can play Leia to push that card in and get the buff too. And what about for command in general? Any of these cards do you think are worth highlighting?
Yeah, Dogfight. This one cost tactic event will let you just attack with a unit even if it's exhausted, it just can't attack bases. This is a great removal card. One of the best in the entire set, I think, actually. one cost removal. It is unit based, so you need to have a unit to deal with the other unit, but your opponent won't really see it coming most of the time when all your stuff is exhausted, and then you just dogfight to take out the thing they just played. This card's gonna be great.
I want to highlight Jack Kirk's Jaeger. I totally mispronounced that, but we had the Clone Trooper, the 2/2 for two with the piloting as good tier. This is straight up better 2 for 2/3. It's got one less trait, I guess, but as long as you're not worried about traits, which this set you shouldn't be, then he's gonna just as a straight up be better. His also pilot is slightly better, and that's if you control a ground on a space unit, which he has to be upgraded to one of those two units anyways. He gives your guy Sentinel, or he's Sentinel, sorry. So that's another benefit. And we'll now move over to the aggression cards. Dudeness in villainy aggression. What stands out for you? What would you be looking for?
I I like the Decimator of Dissidents because this is another sort of indirect synergy card, and you can play this guy on turn 2 as a 3/5 space unit. I'm assuming you play either a first order stormtrooper or you can play a TIE bomber on turn 1, get some direct damage going on the second turn. So I think this card can be pretty solid actually.
And I like the first order synergy in this, and I think General Hux is actually really strong because it gives all of them raid one, which is going to help you to do more damage quickly. Plus, it can also let you draw a card as well himself, so he can help you deal damage and help you draw cards. I think that's really strong. What about in heroism aggression? This is Dunas' other favorite color pairing.
So immediately none of these cards are like super exciting. I do like red 5 because being able to finish off damaged units is just incredibly powerful in a limited environment. But it kind of depends on how easily you can damage those units in the first place.
I think Frisk stands out to me because pilots are upgrades, and so being able to, when he's played as an upgrade, defeat an opponent's upgrade, defeat their pilots seems really strong. Also, it's funny that you can frisk your opponent's frisk, so I love that synergy as well.
Frisk the frisk, so you can frisk while you frisk.
Which of these aggression cards stand out for you?
So I actually really like stay on target for a lot of the same reasons why I liked Punch It earlier. It's a great way to let your vehicles trade up, and it also has the flexibility of just being able to cycle itself if you needed to later on. So it's pretty all right.
Can you explain how hunting aggressor can be a signpost card?
Yeah, this says that I'm trying to make indirect damage the deck. Like I said, the signpost, this is the card that says, "Hey, take me if you want to build around this thing here," right? So
I think aggression's got a couple interesting ones. It's kind of hard for me to just pick one, but Captain Tarkin, great to just make all your units have an extra power and overwhelm. Sham is very fun, I find, because you can get that extra resource if you're behind. In this set, unfortunately, and limited, there's no really way that your opponent's going to ramp. However, you can do the play of not play a resource on your turn,
yeah, yeah.
particularly on four, play Sham and then get caught up, which does kind of pseudo draw you a card. And finally, face off can be hilarious if you can pull it off. It could be a little difficult, but if you can like let them ready a 1/1 TIE fighter token and you can ready your ship that has your leader on it, that could be extreme value. We're going to now turn to the cunning aspect. A cunning villainy. Which of these do you think is going to see any play that you would really want to do?
I'm pretty sure I Have You Now is going to be good because it's essentially a one cost removal spell that does require you to have your own unit, so it's not as easy to pull off, but allowing you to attack with the vehicle and prevent all that damage. Like I said, this is just a one cost removal that lets you just trade without taking anything in return. It's basically a shoot first, but not quite, right?
Yeah, yeah, I like it. What about for heroism?
For heroism, I mean, Fireball is the clear and obvious one, but 3/3 ambush in space is just incredible, right? But if you ambush into a 2/3 unit, obviously it's going to die because it's going to deal 1 damage to itself. So I'm not quite sure how good this card actually is because usually the good thing about ambush is that you ambush, you kill a unit, your unit sticks around, and now you've just created some value. But this guy sort of just kills himself, so you don't really get as much value out of getting a favorable ambush. So I've kind of cooled on this card a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I'm gonna highlight Anakin. I find it interesting his effect to return back to your hand if he's piloted. Giving your unit 2/3 can be strong, so it just gives you some options on what you want to do with it. and always fun when you use Anakin's ability multiple times because it goes back to your hand and you can replay it as a pilot and attack and always get that 2 damage buff. Any of the cunning non-aligned cards that speak to you?
Yeah, I mean, I do want to briefly touch on Sweep the Area. The card is a great balance card. If you target token units, obviously those just go away forever. So that's nice there. But the card I really want to talk about is the Mandalorian. This card, when you play it as a pilot, being able to exhaust an enemy unit is just the tempo swing is just so big and can be really obnoxious. I've had this card played against me a couple times now, and it's felt pretty annoying each time.
One of the fun double aspect cards that is actually playable because its pilot cost is single aspect. And now we're looking at the villainy, neutral, and heroism card. Dudeness, I know that there's one of these cards that you really want to talk about.
Yeah, I will say right now, our boy R2. This guy is, if you're in draft, I think he's very seriously pack one, pick oneable. He's that good. And he's really good with the Resistance X Wing we talked about earlier. You can play that on turn one and then put this R2 on it on the same turn, regardless of which leader you're playing. And they're both just neutral hero cards. So any heroism deck can play this combo. It is really good in a Rose deck, though, because she can then heal the damage you're taking from value trading with your 4/4 you have on turn one. But yeah, I really like R2D2 a lot.
Yeah. I want to just briefly touch on retrofitted airspeeder. There's not very many cards which can attack both ground and space. This card isn't great. It's only gonna when it attacks space, it only deals 2 damage to them. However, it does have ambush, and so yes, its cost is 5. Yes, it only deals 2 damage, but cards that give you a lot of flexibility are always kind of worth having. They can go on the ground or in space, something that I think adds a lot of value to the card.
It combos nicely with the targeting we were talking about earlier too.
Yes. Well, thank you guys very much for staying with us. We went through all the commons and uncommons for Jump to Lightspeed. We hope that you have yourselves an amazing pre release, an amazing draft. Please let us know in the comments which cards you use to take down your event. And we'll see you next time on El Maneuver.
Yep, cheers, y'all.